Experimenting with the nation. Imagine a city built of wooden blocks. Do you see it in your mind? Make sure it has houses and bridges and walls. Knock it down. Now build it again. Which takes longer, destroying or building? Which is harder? It's the same way with governments. Revolutions are difficult. Overthrowing Britain wasn't easy at all for the American colonists, but building a strong nation was much harder. The American Revolution was unusual. It produced people who were good at nation building. When you study other revolutions like the ones in France and Russia, you see how lucky we were. At first, though, it looked like it might not happen. It seemed as if the 13 states would never get along. They certainly weren't united. Each state was printing its own money and making its own rules. 11 states had their own navies. Virginia's Navy had 72 ships. The Continental Congress was trying to run a national government, and it had a navy too, but it was smaller than Virginia's. The Congress was also printing money. As you can guess, soon none of the money was worth anything, and that was terrible for most citizens. Besides all that, each state got into the taxing business. New York was taxing goods from New Jersey, and New Jersey was taxing goods from New York. Virginia and Maryland were squabbling over boundary lines. Little states were jealous of big states and vice versa. In Massachusetts, some farmers rebelled against the government in Boston. In Philadelphia and New York, newspapers reported a movement to create 3 separate nations out of the 13 former colonies. In England, people were saying that the Americans would soon be begging to be taken back. As you can see, the United States got off to a rocky start. We didn't have a good working plan for a government. We didn't begin with the Constitution we now have. The first Constitution of the United States was called the Articles of Confederation. It didn't work well at all. That was because the American citizens were afraid of political power. They had had a bad experience with kings and parliament. They were afraid of a strong Congress and of a strong president. So they went to the other extreme. They didn't give Congress the power to do much of anything. There was no president except the president of the Congress, and there wasn't much he could do either. Ask anyone, who was the first president of our country? The answer will be George Washington. But you can say that the first president was John Hanson. Very few people will believe you. It's true, though. John Hanson became president under the Articles of Confederation on November 5th, 1781. President Hanson didn't make himself remembered because he had no power. In 1781, Americans were facing one of the toughest problems there can be in designing a government. How do you provide freedom for each person and still have a government powerful enough to accomplish things? You have to give up some freedom when you are part of a society that is ruled by law. The question is, how much do you have to give up? The Americans at the end of the 18th century had just fought for liberty, but they weren't about to give much at all. They went too far, but they learned. The national government under the Articles of Confederation was just too weak. Everyone seemed to know it. Most of the time, the states wouldn't even send a representative to Philadelphia to vote at the meetings of the Congress. A lot of people felt the voting wasn't fair anyway. Each state had an equal vote in Congress. That meant that 68,000 Rhode Islanders had one vote, and so did 747,000 Virginians. Then something really insulting happened. In 1783, Congress got chased out of Philadelphia by its own army because it hadn't paid the soldiers their salaries. But Congress had no money to pay the salaries and no power to collect taxes. It is tax money that governments use to pay their bills. It would take 6 years for the people living in this land to create a workable kind of government. At first, the former colonists didn't even know what to call themselves. We began as a nation without a name. Some called us the American Commonwealth. Others said that American Confederation. Some talked of United States, and a few said the United States. But most people still thought of themselves as citizens of the state that they lived in. They were having a hard time accepting the idea of a nation that might be more important and powerful than their separate and beloved states. They didn't even like the word nation. They called it a union of states. People in the territories felt the same way. You already know about independent Vermont. Well, some people tried to make Kentucky into a nation too. In 1792, the Commonwealth of Kentucky became the first state west of the Appalachian Mountains. There was even a state called itself Franklin off to the west of North Carolina. It was a territory where mound builders had once flourished. Before long, Franklin became a state with an Indian name, Tennessee. Settlers were filling up the Ohio River Valley, and that was causing problems. Much of that western land was claimed by Virginia, but other big states were claiming some of it too. The states without western lands were jealous. How could arguments between the states be settled unless a central government had more power than any one state? There was one good thing about the Articles of Confederation. They were so weak that it made a strong constitution possible.